When I was in high school, I got pretty into collecting bootlegged Pokemon games. They're kind of hard to come by, but sometimes you can find them at pawn shops, flea markets, and Goodwills. Even if they're unplayable, they're usually still pretty fun. They're usually made so that people can have the games before they come out in America, and some of the translation errors are really unintentionally hilarious. I've found most of the versions I've played online. You can usually download them for computer emulators and things like that. There's one I haven't been able to find online, though. I bought it at a flea market about 5 years ago. The cartridge looks pretty old, like it's made for a Game Boy Color, and it's entirely black. The title just says Pokemon. No version or anything. There was so little effort put into making the cartridge, I figured it was bound to be really poorly made and really funny. When I started up the game, I could tell it was a typical Pokemon Red bootleg, probably with some kind of mod. It started with the red intro, with Gengar and Nidorino. When it got to the press start screen with red there, though, the Pokemon didn't cycle through like they usually do. The title also read Pokemon Black, which was weird, because I don't think the actual Pokemon Black was even announced yet. When I pressed start, I got the same Professor Oak speech as always, and I picked Charmander as my starter. When I looked at my party later, though, I noticed that I had another Pokemon there too. It was called Ghost. Not a ghost-type Pokemon, just Ghost. It had the same sprite as the ghosts you see around Lavender Town before you get the Sylph Scope. It was level 1, and it only had the move Curse. Curse is an actual move, but it didn't exist yet in Red, so I figured it was just part of the mod. I decided to use Ghost for my next battle, because it seemed like the main focus of the bootleg. I started walking around in the closest patch of tall grass just to see what Ghost could do. I came across a wild Pidgey pretty quickly. It was a level 5, so I figured it'd take out my level 1 Ghost pretty easily, but the game didn't let the wild Pidgey attack. It said the Pidgey was too scared to move. I used Curse, and the screen went entirely black, and the Pidgey cry played, but it was slowed down and lower than normal. I didn't even recognize it until... well, after it had happened a couple of times. After the Pidgey was, I guess, taken out, I just returned to the tall grass. I didn't really think anything of it until I used Ghost in a trainer battle. After using Curse, the black screen and the distorted cry played, and then it put me back in the trainer battle. The weird thing was that the trainer would send out their next Pokemon, but they'd have one less Pokeball showing in their party. I just remembered my first thought being that Ghost had just killed this trainer's Pokemon. Not knocked it out, but actually killed it. It got weirder at the end of the battle. After seeing Red received, I don't know, whatever amount I got, for winning, I had two options, run or curse. So I naturally picked Curse because it just seemed more interesting. The game took me out of the battle scene and back to the overworld, but the trainer was gone. Instead, there was just a tombstone there, like the ones you see in Lavender Town. It was kind of freaky, the idea of killing not only Pokemon but trainers, but I kept playing. I basically resorted to using Ghost constantly, because for the most part, he was completely unbeatable. There were a few cases in which Curse wouldn't work, like on your rival, on Ghost-type Pokemon and trainers you'd have to encounter again, but otherwise, it was always a one-hit kill. I got to the Elite Four in no time at all. I beat them all really quickly, but that's when the game started getting even weirder. After viewing the Hall of Fame, the screen cut to black. The next screen was Lavender Town, but with an old man there looking at the tombstones. I started pushing buttons, and I realized that the old man was my character, but apparently years later. He moved at about half the speed the character normally does. And when I tried to look at my party, none of my Pokemon were there. Not even Ghost, who had been impossible to get rid of before. When I walked around Lavender Town, I realized that nobody else was there. The tombstones were all there from before, including the ones that were there after I used Curse on trainers, but no actual people. It seemed like I could just kind of wander around everywhere except for places that needed HMs, but it was really boring. I still felt like I hadn't finished yet, but eventually I found a shortcut to Pallet Town through Diglett's Cave, where there's usually a tree to be cut down. When I got back to my house in Pallet Town, and then the tile where the game started, the screen went to black again. A sprite of a Pidgey showed up, and then a Caterpie and a Weedle, and then more, and I realized that they were all the Pokemon I'd used Curse on. After it finished my rival's team of Pokemon, it cycled through all of the trainers I'd used Curse on. After that was done, the battle scene appeared, with my sprite as the old man again. Ghost was the opposing trainer, and the text just said, "Ghost wants to fight." My only given option was fight. Fight didn't do anything except make me struggle and knock off some of my HP. When it was Ghost's turn, the text just said, ... until I got to a critical level. Then Ghost used Curse.